new novel, Majority Rules. He's a veteran of Capitol Hill who witnessed firsthand the failures of the 1986 Reagan-era illegal immigrant amnesty bill. For more information on Roger, and if you'd like to get a copy of his book, it's available on Amazon.com. You know, Roger, there are times, in my opinion, when the media is an asset, and there are other times when the media can be a pain in the butt. And looking at both sides of this story, yes, they're bringing the attention to the American public about what is going on at the southern border. It's a story that has to be told. However, on the other side of the coin, they're also showing the weak points of the immigration and custom area that would show the terrorists and the undesirables exactly how to use the system.
That's a good point. But I'll tell you, I think in this case, I'd err on the side of more exposure because back in the 80s and since then through today, I've been, and a lot of members, I think, have been frustrated by the lack of media attention on the border. One of the reasons I think the American public haven't pushed their elected officials to do more is because they haven't, unless you were living in a state on the border and experiencing it, you weren't seeing what was happening on that border. And now they're seeing, for the first time in a long time, what is happening and how easy it is for people to come across that border. And so I think it's a plus. And frankly, I think most of the drug dealers and the cartels, they know where the weak points on that border are. They've been taking advantage of them for years.
It must be very frustrating for the law enforcement officials within a state not being able to do what they can and need to do with the immigration situation because it's under federal jurisdiction.
Yeah, and that was the conflict you saw between the state of Arizona and other states who passed legislation of their own to deal with illegal immigrants and the federal government, and that was, decided by the Supreme Court in 2012, I think it was. They struck down some of the Arizona law. They allowed others to stand. It's a huge conflict. If both were on the same page, it would be great, right? If the federal government was in favor of enforcing the border and securing the border, and the states were all in it together, then they could all work together, and it could happen. And I do think we have to learn from the lessons of the past.
Sure.
That's one of the reasons I wrote this book. You've got to look back at the history of what happened in 1986 and since then, and if we learn from history, we'll do a better job going forward in the future.
I can't understand the stance that the United States government is taking because, as I see it, by them not enforcing the immigration law, they are not protecting the American public, of which they're supposed to be doing. They're protecting the illegal immigrants and not the citizens.
Yeah, well, if you ask the Obama administration, they'll tell you that they have deported thousands of people and that they are enforcing the law. Others would say they're not enforcing it as much as it should be because obviously there's millions of people here and who've come in and are still here and they're still coming in. So the facts are always, a little fuzzy in Washington about exactly who's right. But clearly, if the U.S. government decided to secure that border and put the money and the manpower down there to do it, it could be done. Now, a lot of people say on the other side, you could never do it, it's too expensive. That's simply, I don't believe that for a minute. We've got, people on the moon. We've got an international space station. We're guarding the borders of other countries in the Middle East. We could secure that border if we wanted to.
Hey, Roger, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. I wish you continued success, and I'd love to have you back on in the future.
Thank you.
Take care. Roger Fleming has been my guest. Amazon.com. The name of his book is Majority Rules. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.